Should we be reconsidering condenser microphones for desktop streaming and content creation scenarios? I think so, and that kind of conversation has come up a lot recently, especially after my reviews of a couple broadcast condenser microphones, namely the Rode Broadcaster, which people keep saying mine was broke. I didn't like it, I don't know. But then we had the Earthworks Icon Pro and Ethos microphones, which were competed with dynamic mics like the Shure SM7B and the Electro Voice RE20, but had all of the advantages of a condenser microphone in terms of natural sound reproduction. And a lot of people got kind of miffed in my review of the Ethos, talking about how I was comparing it against dynamic microphones, when of course it would beat it. It's a condenser microphone, and I should compare it to condenser microphones, with the important context missing that most condenser microphones, this one included, typically perform poorly for desktop broadcast scenarios due to them picking up everything, which means my computer fan noise, my hands moving around, my tippity-tip-tap typing, all of that. Whereas the dynamic mics don't, and these more broadcast condenser microphones don't. Well, we're going to start having that conversation today with a series of condenser microphone reviews getting caught up on my mic review cycle. And this is another microphone from 512 Audio, and yes, I'm recording it on the same day that I record my Limelight review, just so I record them together. This is the 512 Skylight, and the design looks like a skylight, I guess. It looks really ridiculous. I don't like it at all, but that doesn't affect the sound. And I think the difference right off the bat, if you go watch the video on the Limelight and this one, given that they're the same price of $200, the sound quality difference you're getting is enormous, and actually the value of the package you're getting is enormous as well, because the Skylight comes with a shock mount and a pop filter. The shock mount, at least the Limelight desperately needed, maybe not so much the pop filter, and the Limelight did not come with either of those things, so that's interesting. The shock mount does add quite a bit of weight to the package to the extent I had to set up a separate microphone stand rather than my usual arms. I'm EposVox, the stream professor, by the way. That was quite the intro to set up the context for this. I review tons of gear and products on the channel to help make sure you are investing your money in the right place. I don't believe gear matters more than your content or your message, but spending your money on the right gear so you can most clearly convey that message is very important, and I don't like seeing people waste money, and so I test all sorts of gear so that you don't have to. This microphone is from a new company called 512 Audio, which branched off of a company called Warm Audio, which was focused on studio gear and all of that. And 512 is focused more on content creators and kind of the independent artists. The lower price bracket, basically, is what that messaging always comes down to. So here we have their condenser microphone. They released two microphones at the same time back in August. Yes, I'm just getting around to reviewing them, both for $200. The Limelight was a dynamic broadcast microphone designed for vocals and crisp, clear broadcast vocals. Made some really interesting frequency choices that I'm not sure I agreed with, but potentially had some advantages. And then here is the Skylight, which is a large diaphragm condenser microphone, which theoretically means it has a bigger actual capsule in there compared to your standard ones. I have a couple other large diaphragm mics from the likes of Lewitt and CAD that we'll finally be reviewing soon, and is designed to provide the most natural kind of sound available, the richness and the warmth and the detail of your true studio sound without the studio, as their marketing fluff in front of me says. Looking at specs real quick here, we are looking at a 34mm gold-plated large diaphragm condenser capsule. It is a cardioid, which means it's going to try to reject the sound behind it, mostly pick up in front, but not a hypercardioid, which is a much more tighter focus pattern of the Limelight. A frequency range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz, so back more in the natural kind of sound compared to their Limelight, and a max SPL of 144 decibels. This thing is significantly heavier than their Limelight for some reason. I noted that in the Limelight review for a dynamic microphone, which are often quite heavy. It was super light. I didn't actually cite the weight, but it weighs less than a pound, whereas this one weighs 2.2 pounds. Most dynamic mics, like this one, weighs a ton. This is a toy. The Skylight weighs quite a bit. It has quite the interesting design here, as you can see. It looks like a lightsaber hilt or something, or a skylight, I guess, is what they were going for. The lines is pretty interesting. Whenever I unboxed it, I believe in a Streamer News or something stream, some people said they liked the striking design. Many of you said you hated it. It doesn't have any switches or anything like that to configure the sound. It is all just the natural pickup of your voice and what you do with it after the fact. And frankly, I think I'm a fan. It sounds pretty good. My initial impressions, I think, were due to the GoXLR or the default setting or the post-processing settings I think I left on the GoXLR whenever I first plugged it in for my demo during that stream. I didn't like it very much, but I like it quite a bit, and I think my perspective skewed a little bit compared to the Limelight, which I'm not a huge fan of. I think it has some advantages, but it doesn't produce the sound that I like to produce. and this microphone does. Condenser microphones are great. But are they suitable for desktop streaming? That is the question, and why I have said for a decade now on this channel that you should not be buying a condenser microphone for your desktop streaming setup because of things like this. The loud computer fan noise, typing noise, background sounds, me rustling in my chair that is going to get picked up by the condenser microphones. So running through real quick, I talk about this in most every review, but the difference between dynamic and condenser microphones: dynamic microphones are effectively powered by the sound waves hitting the capsule that activates it and sends the signal down the chain, whereas condenser microphones are constantly receiving phantom power, which then makes it more sensitive to sound in general, which comes with the category or the consequence of picking up additional sounds. And most condenser microphones like this are designed for kind of vocal boosts or little recording setups where you have sound treatment, so they're not designed to reject as much background noise as, say, a broadcast mic, which has quite the different form factor designed to reject more background noise. So this microphone is significantly picking up more background noise than most of the streaming microphones I cover. For our comparisons here, since this is a $200 microphone and we are discussing the condenser versus dynamic debate as we're going to continue over the next few microphone reviews of condenser microphones, I'm going to compare both of them. So I'm going to include the Limelight, a couple other dynamic microphones I included in that review, but we're also going to loop in some condensers. Admittedly, because they're not so great for this use case, I haven't reviewed that many condenser microphones. And in fact, the ones I have available to me, I've never even really reviewed at all. We're talking about XLR here. This is an XLR microphone. I have reviewed USB microphone, so I guess I'll include the Elgato Wave as that's the best price point comparison. That's like $130, and it's a USB condenser microphone. Sounds wonderful. We'll compare that as well, but then I'll have to throw in, just so we can build up to those videos, the Lewitt LCT 440 Pure, which have been on my to review list for a very long time. Let's get to those samples, shall we? 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 3 rings for the Elven Kings under the sky, 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. We have a talking while typing test, talking while typing on box royale switches, tippity tap. Also talking while clicking. Talking while typing, typing with box royale switches, tip tap tip, talking while typing and clicking, talk tip tap. This is a talking while typing test, talking on box royale switches, talking while typing, click 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 click. And we have our white noise test. We're starting out in front of the microphone, coming around the side. I'm going to stop narrating this from now on, around back. And now this is the white noise test in front of the microphone, going around the microphone, behind the microphone, below the microphone, above the microphone, and back in front. And this is our white noise test in front of the microphone, around the side of the microphone, around the back of the microphone, up top above the microphone, down below the microphone, back to the right, back to the front. Capture cards are great, but they won't make you a popular streamer, nor help you turn streaming into a business. I was just talking in a recent podcast about how I'm frustrated that so much of the content creator journey involves just relearning or reteaching things that most of us have gone through, with no real way of passing that along. The awesome people behind Streamer Square are here to change all of that with the launch of SolarStream, a new educational hub focused on all things streaming. SolarStream features 30 courses with more on the way, covering topics of all levels, from just getting started with streaming up to the cool important stuff like analytics, stream growth, and even taxes and other business objectives. If you're serious about streaming as a career or even a side job, or you just want to be the best you can be at it, don't get caught without a plan or a strategy. Sign up for SolarStream with the link in the video description and use the code EPOS for 10% off your first purchase. As you can see, noise rejection ain't great, but it sounds really, really good. In fact, you often don't need to do a whole lot of post-processing unless you want to roll off some of that bass or, tweak it ever so slightly, or you got a gnarly, nasally frequency being picked up. You usually don't have to tweak these that much. So another advantage that comes in the form factor of being that wasn't the right word, but of being a condenser microphone is that you don't need a hefty preamp. For a lot of these microphones, including the $99 Rode Pod mic, but especially ones like the RE20 or the SM7B, the dynamic microphones often require a mic activator, which is basically like an inline preamp that takes phantom power and converts it to additional free gain effectively for those microphones to compensate for your audio interface probably not having good enough preamps and producing more hiss or self-noise at those higher decibel gains. Condenser microphones take that phantom power on its own and require significantly less gain. I'm running at 28 decibels of gain right now, or plus 28 dB of gain, versus the 50 or 60 you need for some of the dynamic mics. So you get to cheap out on some of the hardware as well while still getting good sound, which is kind of neat. I'm going to say for $200, it is really hard within the current streaming microphone price bracket. The Elgato Wave fares competitively for sure. Within this price bracket, it is very hard to get a better sound out of a microphone from the dynamic side than the condenser side. The condenser side will always sound significantly better, but you have all of that background noise and ambient noise that you have to compensate for. This is more of an issue if you are adding compressors or limiters or EQing it a little bit or whatever. You will increase that noise floor and those ambient sounds, and that is something I used to always run into, is adding that compressor increases the noise floor as well. So if you're doing post-processing, which a compressor or a limiter in some capacity is always needed for whenever you scream or have, you're not always going to scream, but whenever you shout, get loud sounds, something loud happens, you want to reduce that a little bit and roll it off a little bit so that you're not hurting your audience's ears and distorting a whole lot and peaking and clipping. So you need it a little bit, and that will raise up that noise floor. Now, we have a lot of great options these days to remove background sound. You have built into OBS now is RN Noise, which is an AI-based model that runs on the CPU, runs fairly decently and does a pretty good job of removing background noise. And on the GPU side, NVIDIA has their RTX Broadcast or RTX Voice suite of apps, which runs on the graphics card and removes background sound and does a really good job. It's gotten kind of weird over the years, over the past couple years, but it does a really good job. And I saw my demo where I'm vacuuming and stuff, and it mainly just picks up your voice. Obviously, it's going to cut those frequencies out of your voice a little bit, so you're still going to sound a little weird, but it removes background sound. And so when you just have a normal HVAC background sound or something like that, it will do a lot to keep your frequencies in check. But with the dynamic mic, you often don't need that, and you get a lot cleaner sound in a lot of cases by having no noise removal than having it. It's a back and forth. I think we're going to review a couple more of these dynamic or condenser mics, as I said, and then we're going to have a bigger discussion about condensers versus dynamics for streaming. And I specifically want to hear from you all in this video. So in the comment section down below, as well as in our Discord, we have an audio text setup, as well as just a streamer chat in our Discord server, discord.gg/EposVox. Let's get the conversation going. Do you stream with a condenser microphone? What's your experience been like? Have you switched back and forth between them? What's that been like? Let's talk. And we're going to build this into a bigger kind of multi-part thing going on here. I will say 512 has done really good with this microphone. My first impressions weren't great. It looks ridiculous, but they have a really good sound for $200. That is rock solid IMO. I think it does really well if you're looking for an XLR mic, and the fact that they include the pop filter custom fit to the mic and the shock mount custom fit to the mic in the package is really nice and makes me all that much more disappointed that none of that is included with the Limelight. Should I move to just using pure condenser microphones for my videos? Spoilers, I already kind of said yes, because I said the Icon Pro is probably what I'm using for the most part. That's probably going to be the case. Alright, enough for me. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more tech education and stream guides. Go check out this other video on getting a microphone that's completely out of the frame if you don't want a microphone in your face at all. So we're going to be looking at shotgun mics and dialogue mics and things like that if you want to learn more about that whole experience. Join us on Discord, and remember, be kind, rewind.